Good evening and welcome to the Springfield Community Preservation Committee meeting. My name is Karen Lee, Administrative Consultant, and today is June 25th, 2020, and the time now is 6:12. The recording secretary is Suzanne Chauveau, and the CPC logo was designed by Nancy Urbachet of TSM Design. If you are listening to the recording without the video, the notice on the screen, and the CPC logo was designed by Nancy Urbachet of TSM Design. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to the governor's executive order concerning the open meeting laws, the city of Springfield is providing public notice that this public meeting will be conducted using remote collaboration technology. This remote public Zoom meeting can be viewed on Channel 17, Springfield Comcast Network, Focus Springfield Community TV website, on focusspringfield.com/watch/government. Also on facebook.com/Focus Springfield and on facebook.com Springfield Community Preservation Committee. As a reminder for those of us participating in the Zoom call, please make sure that your mic is placed on mute until you're called upon to comment. Over the last 3 meetings, applicants for CPA funding were invited to present a 5-minute presentation on their project. Tonight, the Community Preservation Committee will begin deliberations on the 25 projects, and in a few minutes, our chair will review the process in more detail. Thank you to everyone who submitted public comments on the proposed projects. As background, the Community Preservation Act was created by the legislature and governor in the year 2000. It was adopted by voters in Springfield in November 2016, and the CPA ballot question passed in all 8 wards, all 17 neighborhoods, and in 63 of the 64 precincts. This is Springfield's 3rd year of grant funding. The CPA fund is created via a 1.5 surcharge on real estate taxes and a statewide Community Preservation Act trust fund, distributed to municipalities and funded by the Registry of Deeds fees. With the show of strong local support, the CPC hosted 2 outreach workshops earlier in the year and established a Facebook presence, refreshed the community preservation page on the Springfield City website, and developed a mailing list to inform and encourage individuals and civic groups to consider CPA as a funding resource for community-related projects. Photos of previously funded projects can be found on the CPC Facebook page. To contact the Community Preservation Committee by email, cpc@springfieldcityhall.com, Springfield City website at springfield-ma.gov/finance, facebook.com/Springfield Community Preservation Committee. You can also telephone us at 413-530-1268 or send us mail at City Hall, Springfield Preservation Committee, 36 Court Street, room 412, Springfield, Mass. 01103. If you have any suggestions to increase outreach for next year's funding cycle, or if you'd like to be placed on our mailing list for updates and information on the next funding cycle, or you have a public comment on tonight's meeting, please use the information on the screen to contact the committee. CPA funds are available to individuals or groups for recreational and open space, historic resources, and community housing. In this cycle, there is approximately $1.9 million of funding available for the Springfield area. Projects funded in prior years are available to view on the city website, springfield-ma.gov, on the Community Preservation Committee page. 9 members serve on the committee and are appointed to serve a 3-year term. 3 members are neighborhood representatives, and 1 member each from the Historical Commission, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Park Commission, Housing Authority, and the Springfield Preservation Trust, Inc. And with that, I'll turn the meeting over to our chairman, Robert McCarroll, to introduce the rest of the committee. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen, and welcome everyone. Good to see you. So tonight we have President Lamar Cook, who is a neighborhood representative, Gloria DiFilippo, the planning board rep, David Finn, the Historical Commission rep, Juanita Martinez, the Conservation Commission rep, Terry Mitchell, another neighborhood rep. We may be joined, but I don't see her here yet, Terry Rodriguez, the park rep, Ralph Slate, a neighborhood rep, Willie Thomas, the Housing Authority rep, and I'm Bob McCarroll, the Springfield Preservation Trust rep. So what I put first on the agenda was a request coming from the Office of Housing regarding the first-time homebuyer program assistance that we recommended 2 cycles ago. And they still have money left, and they would like to raise the amount they can give an eligible household. It was $2,500. HUD is allowing them to raise the folks that make less than 80% of metropolitan median income to giving them, I think, $4,500, and they want to do the same with CPA. So Bobby DeMousis from the Office of Housing is here. And Bob, do you want to just say a few words on that and then see if there are any questions?
Absolutely. So again, the HUD funds that we have and have had for years in the city was $2,500 for people earning up to 80% of the area median income. We made the decision and got approval to raise that to $4,000 per household. We still have $44,000 left in the CPA funds, and so we'd like to keep one application. People can apply if they're up to 100% and 100% area median income, and we can give them all the same amount. And that's basically it. It'd just be great to increase the amount for those people earning 81% to 100% of the area median income.
Any committee members have questions? No. Well, again, I would entertain then a motion that we approve the Office of Housing's request to raise the ceiling for the first-time homebuyer assistance to $4,000 per eligible household.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we now will go through a roll call vote. Lamar?
Yay.
Gloria?
Yay.
David? Oh, David, I think you were muted. Was that a yes?
My apologies, Bob. Yes.
All right. Juanita?
Yes.
Terry Mitchell?
Yes.
We still don't have Terry Rodriguez. Ralph Slate?
Yes.
Willie Thomas? Willie?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Carol is left. So there are 8 yeses and one not present. Okay. Moving on, the other item is that, so someone's got to mute their, we're getting some interference.
Terry, I think your microphone is open. If you could put that on mute.
Okay. Yeah, Terry's now muted. So the next order of business is to adopt the minutes of the June 2nd meeting. Can we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes of the June 2nd meeting.
Second.
I'll second that.
All right. Once again, a roll call vote. Lamar?
Yes.
Gloria?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Juanita?
Yes.
Terry Mitchell?
Yes.
All right. Terry Rodriguez is still absent. Ralph?
Yes.
Willie? Willie?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes as well. The other order is of business is that the last year we asked the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission for some local technical support from Shannon Walsh, their preservation planner. Shannon will review the plans for any project that is a historic resource that is being assisted by CPA money that's not already a tax credit project. If you're a tax credit project, the State Historical Commission's already reviewing you. And so Shannon has done that. We've only had one project so far, and her assistance ends at the end of the fiscal year. So this would be a vote to request the Pardee Valley Planning Commission to give us continued technical assistance in reviewing the historic resources that are being aided by CPA money.
I'd like to make a motion that we request Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to continue the assistance for us for our historic projects.
I second it.
Okay, any discussion? If not, we'll take the vote. So,
Just really quick, Bob, was there a cost associated with that, Bob?
No, the Pardee Valley Planning Commission provides, I think, up to 15 hours a year to various components of their member municipalities. So it is a free service. Obviously, if we get to the point where she has run out of her 15 hours, well, we'll have to cross that bridge.
Good, thank you.
All right. So Lamar,
Yes.
Gloria,
Yes.
David, Juanita,
Yes.
Terry Mitchell,
Yes.
Terry Rodriguez is still not here, Ralph,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
and Bob is a yes. So the other item is that Karen Lee, our administrative consultant, is on a yearly contract. It will soon be up, and we can indeed renew it. I've spoken to the procurement office, and we have the ability to increase the contract without going out for RFP up to 25%. And you know, when we created this position and put out the initial RFP, we made some guesstimates as to how much time the administrative consultant would spend. And Karen is finding that she's spending probably a little bit more than that time. So what I'm suggesting is that we authorize that in renewing the contract, we take advantage of increasing it to the 25%, so that we have enough leeway that we can handle whatever are her hours. And so Karen, if you may want to say a few things regarding that.
Okay, sure. Currently, it makes sense because we're able to have some leeway. My hours can range anywhere from like 12 to 22. And the way it's structured, leaving it at, increasing it by 25% maxes out at 22 per week, 22 hours per week. So it gives some ability when there are heavier weeks. What I'm finding is the outreach part. It doesn't seem like it takes a lot of time, but it does, to talk to people and to find ways to reach more people, to let them know that CPA is a resource. So I think it was a good starting point, what the committee decided a year ago. But as we're moving forward on it, we're seeing that there's some increase in time for the position. So,
Anyone have any questions? All right. So I think, Ralph, did you make the motion, or did someone make a motion yet? I forgot.
No, but I will make a motion to
Okay.
reauthorize. So are we reauthorizing Karen's contract with potential for up to 25% increase in
Correct.
the number of hours?
Yeah, well, and the cost that goes with those hours.
And the cost that goes with that hours, of course, right? Yes. All right. So I make a motion that we reauthorize Karen's contract for the administrative position for the next year with an increase of 25% in the hours and the cost associated with those hours.
I will second that.
Okay, going along, all in favor. So Lamar,
Yes.
Gloria,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Juanita,
Yes.
Terry Mitchell,
Yes.
still no Terry Roberts, Ralph,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, so.
Thank you all.
And I just want to make sure, we did take the vote on the housing, correct? Yes, all right. So the next item is the budget. You know, we voted on the budget at the last meeting. And then I had a conversation with the city comptroller who said, you know, you really should use the figure that comes in this year. We were using the figure that came in several years ago. And so I had sent everyone the draft budget. And I hope someone has it because I'm looking and I pulled the wrong piece of paper to bring with me. So I'm hoping someone has it there. I think it will say fiscal 21 draft budget 25 June 2020.
I have it.
Okay, so Karen, if you could just read down through the expenses so everyone can follow on their paper.
Okay, starting with administration.
No, I would start it should be at the top. It should
Oh, at the top. Okay, so this is the FY21 revised. So the local surcharge based at FY20 revenue is $1,568,000. For the state distribution based on the DOR's 11.2 advisory of May 4th, 2020, that amount is $174,720. The interest is $12,000, and that total CPA revenue is $1,746,720. The revenue for community housing is $174,672,000.
The reserve, not the revenue.
Reserve, right, the reserve. And the reserve for historic resources is the same amount, $174,672. The reserve for the open space and recreation is the same amount, $174,672. The administration budget is $59,550, and that breaks down to $1,000 for office supplies, $3,000 for office equipment, $2,000 for the minute secretary, $1,500 for the annual plan and the hearing ad, $4,350 for the coalition dues, $1,500 for project banners, $31,200 part-time CPA consultant, $18,000 in unanticipated expenses, and that leaves an unallocated reserves of $1,163,154.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the primary change was increasing the anticipated revenue from the tax levy, increasing slightly the anticipated Department of Revenue distribution, and then obviously when we do, and including interest, which we'd never included before, not that it's a lot, but 12,000 is nothing to sneeze at. And now then obviously we need to increase the reserves to reflect 10% of the total. So I guess if anyone has any questions, otherwise I'd be looking for a motion to adopt it.
Bob, I have a question.
Yes.
The 31,200 part-time CPA consultant, does that take into account what we just voted on?
Yes, I did a quick thing, and the increase, the contract will now go up to about 31,000. So this is about 200 over that. So there's a little bit of wiggle room.
Okay. Then I would make a motion that we accept the fiscal 21 draft budget revised.
I second that.
Okay, so all in favor, Lamar,
Yes.
Gloria,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Juanita,
Yes.
Terry Mitchell.
Yes.
We don't have Terry Rodriguez. And Karen, while we're taking this vote, can you try to contact Terry and seeing whether she's got a problem logging in or whether she's just not going to be with us the whole meeting?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ralph,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
and Bob is a yes. The other item is, we need to have approximately 10% of our revenues set aside in those reserves. And because the fiscal 20 budget was underestimated and reserves have come in much higher, we need to actually adjust the amount that goes into the reserves. And I brought this up at a previous meeting. And Ralph suggested that we wait until all of the money is in. And I agreed to do that. However, I just realized that in speaking with the comptroller, Pat Burns, he feels that we need to have city council approval for this increase of the fiscal 20 reserves. And if we put this off to our next meeting, which we have not yet chosen a date for, we could find that the city council meets in July before we get to vote on it. And therefore, we can't have a formal increase in the reserves before we start actually voting to allocate money out of those reserves. So what I would like to suggest is, as Stuart at the coalition says, you don't have to be spot on, but you have to be somewhat in the ballpark. And I think the amount of money that has come in as of the May 31st revenue statement we received will give us a good idea of how much we're going to get by the end of it, by June 30th. So you should have received from me by email the proposed fiscal 20 adjusted budget that increases the set aside in the three accounts to $192,621 each. So I guess first we'll take questions, and then I'd like a motion that we approve it so we can send it on to the city council for their approval before we act again. Right, Ralph, you have a question?
No, I was going to just say I don't have any questions. I'm comfortable, if that's the case, with using the estimates.
Okay. You want to make a motion then?
Yes, I make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 21 estimates as
Fiscal year 20.
I'm sorry, 20 estimates based on, I don't know how to say it though. Is it based on what you sent out? Is that how you want me to say it?
Yes, I guess the base is in the draft that you have before you.
Right. So give me just 1 second here. I'm just
Either
trying
that or just make a motion to increase the reserves to $192,621.
Okay, then I make a motion to increase the reserves to $192,621.
I'll second.
Okay, and that is for all three reserves. So we'll take the vote. Lamar,
Yes.
Gloria,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Juanita. Oh, okay, you're muted, but okay. Yeah,
Yes.
Terry Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, no Terry Rodriguez. Ralph,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
and Bob. Yes. All right. So now we are on the really exciting business. We have met with all of the 25 applicants. We've given them time to get us additional information and to get us, if they have support letters, Karen should have forwarded all of those to you. And your assignment for this meeting was to go through the 25 applications, to vet them, and to come in with your top 8 projects and the amount of money you would give them. What we will do tonight is go through. Karen will put them up on a spreadsheet. You should have received your own little mini spreadsheet, so you can add them to that if you wish. And it will give us an idea of how the projects are falling out. We will then have a discussion on each one of the projects and see whether there are additional questions we have for the applicants or whatever. And then at some time later in the summer, we will actually start the actual vote. So with that being said, and just to add in case anyone's watching, we are only a recommending body. Our recommendations get sent to the city council. We cannot vouch for what the city council's schedule is. I would hope that we would have our recommendations to them in August or September. How long they take and whether they approve them is their prerogative. And then, of course, whatever gets approved, the law department still has to draw up the contracts to get the money to the entities. So with that being said, we're going to start with Lamar. We don't need anyone's rationale at this point. What we simply want is the 8 projects that are your top ones and the amount you would give. So Lamar, do you want to start us off?
Yes, so I have the Duggan Park for the full amount.
Okay, 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lamar. I'm going to share the screen now, and as you go on, I'm going to just click that on. Is that what you'd like?
Yeah, that's fine. I apologize. I didn't write the amounts down, so I just have the full amounts in there.
Okay.
So I have
Also, Terry Rodriguez, I wasn't able to reach her.
Okay. All right. Well, Duggan was asking if you remember for $250 for 4 years. So
it was the $1 million, correct?
It was a total of $1 million, yes.
Yep.
So for the purposes of this one, Karen, type in just 250. Okay, your second project?
Quick question. That wasn't a deal breaker from Pat if we didn't offer the full $1 million, correct?
Well, once again, we're going to have this discussion once we start discussing the projects.
Okay. So I have Duggan Park. I have the bike park study.
Mm-hmm. And that was an $80,000 ask, Karen.
Yep.
Looking forward. Oh, there it is. Okay. Could you give me, if you see the screen, could you give me the number, if you don't mind?
Small. Yeah, I don't have the number, unfortunately.
Line 22, I mean.
22, yep.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the number on that, you want to put 80, did you say?
Well, that's the max. That's what they asked.
Okay.
Karen, just to jump in for one moment, I think if along the top of your screen, if you click home, it will hide that whole area at the top. And that will give you some more real estate to play with. If you click home right between file and insert, that normally hides it.
Is that what you mean? I don't know.
So if you click in the top left of your screen, if you click home, I think it hides that whole bar along the top. Nope.
No. Yeah. Okay, I'm not finding where home is. I don't see home.
So if you click the back button, and then if you click on that, does it hide the bar along the top, or have they changed that?
I don't see it.
This is fine, Karen.
Okay, all right.
Not the end of the world.
Okay, sorry about that all.
Okay, Lamar, choice 3.
I'm sorry. So I had the Duggan, the bike park,
Yep.
classical. I had the invasive study.
The Reed Green Springfield?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
The Highland Rail Trail.
okay.
I had Ellis Brooklyn Apartments.
Okay, and that was a 250 ask for 250 for 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. Long Pond.
Okay. That's 7,
Yep, and the Thompson Triangle. The Thompson.
okay. All right, Gloria? Gloria, you there with your top 8?
Sorry, forgot to unmute.
Oh,
Okay, Forest Park Aquatic Gardens, number 7. I didn't do the amounts,
Yeah,
so just
okay.
put it in for the
yeah,
110,000. The next one would be the emergency rental assistance for COVID, number 6.
Do we, I don't have all the amounts. I'll have to like look at them or find them. So if anyone knows what they are and you have the figure in front of you, if you could just let me know, please.
The amount is 250, but I would not go with 250. I would probably go with half of that amount, 175.
Okay.
Historic home restoration.
and that was a $200,000 ask, Gloria. Is that what what you would give?
No, not for CPA R funding. That would be 175,000 for the emergency rental assistance.
No, I'm talking about the historic home renovation
Oh,
program.
I mean, yeah. I would probably go with 100,000.
Okay.
They were asking for 200,000. The next one would be Long Pond Feasibility Study. 100,000. Marshall Roy Field Park. And that would be for the 101,550.
The walking path.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that amount again, please?
101,550. And the Springfield Bike Park, Wheels Park, number 22, for the full amount, 80,000. And Regreen Springfield, 18, for the 40,635. And Thompson Triangle, 24, for 46,000.
Okay. Thank you. David?
Yes, so under the category of community housing, I would support the Elias Brookings project at 400,000. And Bob, you had mentioned, and I just want to be clear, the CPA request was for $500,000. Is that correct?
That's what I thought, David, but I could be wrong. I thought they were asking for 250 over 2 years, but I could be wrong.
Okay, I will approve at 400,000, and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Under the category of historic preservation, I'll approve the Thompson Triangle project at 100% for 46,000, as well as the Kilroy House project at 100% for 92.7 thousand, so 92,700.
Okay.
Under the open space category, I will approve the Regreen Springfield invasive plant at 100% for $40,600, or $635 to be exact. Under the same category, the Duggan Park project, 100% for $250,000. And the Springfield Bike Park project at 100% for $80,000.
And that's 6, David.
That is 6. I have 2 more.
Oh, okay.
Under recreation, I have the East Springfield Splashpad project at 100% for $245,800. And the Forest Park Education Center remodel project for $200,000, which is, I believe, I'm not sure it's 100%, but $200,000.
Okay.
Wait, what number is that? I'm sorry, David.
That's the zoo, the last one.
Okay.
The last
That
one.
was at 200,000?
$200,000.
Thank you.
Okay, Juanita?
All right, so I don't have them in any particular order here. The Forest Park Aquatic Gardens for the full amount of 110,000.
Okay.
The Thompson Triangle Fountain for the full amount of 46,000. The Marshall Roy Field Park for the full amount of 101,550.
I'm sorry, with the walking path or the spray pool?
The walking path. And the Building Beauty for the Community, number 2, for the full amount, 33,600. The Historic Home Renovation Program for the full amount of 200,000. The Walter Vincent Smith Preservation full amount, 165,587. The Regreen Springfield for the full amount of 40,635. The Kilroy House for the full amount of 92,755.
Okay. Thank you. Terry Mitchell.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
Duggan, 200,000.
Yep.
For Elias, 200,000. School. Regreen, $4,635.
Regreen is 4,000 or 40,000?
I thought it was.
Terry, did you 4,000 or 40,000?
40,000.
Okay.
The bike study, 80,000. Marshall Walk Path, 100,000.
Okay, so can we slow down just a little bit, please?
I'm sorry.
Okay,
The Marshall Walk Path is 100,000.
the bike park study,
The Springfield
walk
Bike
path.
Park.
Marshall, yeah, the bike study was 80,000.
That's number 22, Karen.
And then Marshall Roy's walk path is 100,000.
so not the full amount.
No, 100,000. And Long Pond, 100,000. Forest Park Zoo, 100,000 also. And then the Thomas Triangle Fountain,
Mhm.
the 46,000. I think that's what they were asking for.
Yep, all right, thank you. Ralph, how about you?
Okay, so I had historic home renovation program for 200,000.
So Terry, can you mute yourself now? We got
I'm
stand up.
sorry.
Okay, so start again, Ralph.
Sure, historic home renovation program, 200,000.
Yep.
Springfield Bike Park study, 80,000.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Yeah.
Gloria?
Karen, you're putting it in the wrong column if you want to go by people's initials. If that's okay with you, it's okay with me.
No, that is what I'm doing. What am I doing? What did I do wrong here?
I'm in the wrong column.
Terry,
Yeah, you've put Terry Mitchell where I go because I'm going last. So it's easier at this point, Karen, just to change the RM to TM and to change then the TM to the RS because you're putting now, so yeah, take out RM and put TM and then you've got her correct.
Okay, I was just gonna move it over. All right.
Whatever's easier for you. All right.
Okay, is that right now?
Well, no, now you've got Ralph's choices under Terry Rodriguez.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Ralph.
But now I'm under Bob's, but.
Oh. Yeah, just change RM to RS.
Okay, because Terry Rodriguez isn't here. All right. Okay, I don't know what happened here. Okay, are we right now?
That's good.
Yep.
Hey, Ralph. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, so we're looking at number 3 then, right? Forest Park Aquatic Gardens Gazebo, 110,000.
Okay.
Next one is Regreen Springfield Invasive Plant Program, 40,635. Oh, I was waiting for you to say go ahead. That's fine.
Okay.
Next one is George Walter Vincent Smith Art Museum Exterior Preservation, 165,587.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is Building Beauty for the Community, 33,600. Next one is Marshall Roy Field Walking Path. And that's 101,550. And the last one is Rock Brimmen Boathouse Adaptive Reuse Study, 35,000.
Okay. Thank you, Ralph. Willie, you're up next. Willie, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to start with Duggan Park project.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the dollar amount, so I'm going with what was requested based upon my review. So whatever they asked for Duggan Park, I'm approving it.
Okay.
Also, at Forest Park, the Forest Park Aquatic Garden gazebo.
Mm-hmm.
Again, whatever the request is.
Yeah.
And then I'm going with the museum, GWB Smith Art Museum, for the requested amount. Marshall Roy Phil Park Spray Pool, again, requested amount.
Yep.
Regreen Springfield Invasive Plant Program.
Okay.
We're going to go reuse to rebuild wealth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Spanish American War Memorial.
Yep.
And Thompson Park Triangle.
Okay. All right. So if you're ready for me, Karen, it is $250,000 for Elias Brookings Apartments, $165 for the Smith Art Museum, $200 for the Historic Home Renovation Program, $92,000.
Okay. That's too fast.
Okay.
I'm
So,
sorry.
so
I have Elias Brookings for 250.
yeah, and then it is the Smith Art Museum for 165. The Historic Home Renovation Program for 200. The Kilroy House for 92,000. The Marshall Roy Walking Path for 101. The Regreen Springfield for 40. The Spanish American War Memorial for 20,000. And the Bike Park Study for 80. So, so if we can take a moment to tally how many responses each project got.
You know what, Bob, can I make a suggestion that everybody look at their list just to make sure it was right, because sometimes it went a little fast.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. If everyone can look at their list, and while everyone's looking at it, Karen, if you could read Willie's back to him, because he can't see it.
Okay. Sure. Willie.
I can see it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I have the screen.
Okay.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
This is more procedural. So, you know, we have these various votes, but I noted that when the projects that I selected were for less than the total amount award, you know, the total amount that we have available to award.
Uh-huh.
So the question is, if somebody does not receive a vote on this list, are they precluded from funding, or are we going to discuss that in the second round?
Yeah, absolutely. This is not a vote. This is, we will now tally up and we will simply start discussing, and we will start discussing from the project that got the most response all the way down through the projects that got no responses.
Okay, I remember now.
And then when we meet the next time, we will start voting on projects, and we will go until either we've run out of money or we've run out of projects that we really feel we want to recommend to the city council. Okay?
Okay, that makes.
Bob, could I just, if you have the figures there, the reuse number 19, reuse wood to rebuild wealth. Do you have the total on that? Or the requested amount?
I have that one. It's $20,000.
Okay, and then the classical high school.
Classical is asking for $120,000.
And the Highland Trail.
100,000.
Okay, so I think it's all filled in now.
Hey, Karen, is it possible to tally the numbers to see what the totals are per person at the bottom? Like to add up the cells?
I'm actually doing that right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I use Google Sheets and I can tally it in Google Sheets, but not so much in Excel. I don't have the formula.
Aaron, if you just drag your cursor down across all of the numbers in a column, in the bottom, there'll be a
hit
bar.
sum, I think. Hit sum.
Well, and
I can't see your bar, but there should be a sum number. It should tell you the total number of cells that have items in it, as well as a
If you
sum.
click FX at the top, that's for a function. It's towards the left side of your screen. The little FX.
yes.
And that's how you then add a sum function. Yeah, okay.
It's actually
now be able to highlight the numbers
it's already
you
in the
want.
bottom bar. You don't need to create a function, but
No, say,
Yeah.
I should have put this into Google Sheets is what I should have done.
and if you just highlight the cells, and I can't see the bottom of your spreadsheet, but there's a bar at the bottom which will tell you how many cells you have that contain information, as well as the sum of the numbers in those cells. Oh, you're going.
So Karen, you shouldn't go that far down. You should go into the last project name.
Like that.
So column B. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to, yeah. So try now using.
Then hit FX.
Karen?
I don't want, I don't want to waste people's time with this. I'm sorry.
I've already done it. I have the numbers if you want them. I just counted them.
Juanita, going old school,
Well,
yes.
I'm going old school, but I got it.
Well, Juanita, you're talking about how many people picked each project?
Right. Isn't that what you were looking?
No,
Yeah.
no. Lamar had asked for the total that each of us dollar-wise would have allocated to our top 8 choices. But I'm far more interested in our seeing what the rankings are for projects. So Karen, over in the column just past Terry Rodriguez, Juanita's going to read down the number of responses per project, and you will write that in, and I did it myself, so I'll proof you, Juanita, as you go.
Okay.
All right. Do you want the amounts?
No,
Is
no,
that what
I
you-
only want to know that 2 people selected that one. Is that what you did?
No, I
No,
counted, what I counted was how many people voted for the building beauty in the community and so on.
Well, so is what Karen's putting on the screen, this is what I had in mind.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Okay.
it. That's what she's doing.
And then once Karen is done with this, we will start discussing each project, starting with the project that got the most responses, which is really easy. Green Springfield got the
Right.
most. And we
Really?
We will discuss our way down the list, including the ones that got no responses. So everyone will be discussed tonight, and then you'll have a lot to mull over when we actually start to vote and we have to worry about dollar amounts. And just as a reminder, as Karen's doing this, when we vote, we have to be mindful of which pot of money we're taking things from. So we will have, in a sense, a bookkeeper, one of you, so that if we take to help a housing project and we take it from the housing reserve, we need to note that. And if we take it from the historic reserve or we take it from the undesignated reserve. But we don't have to worry about that tonight. Suffice it to say, I'm probably fairly sure that most of these projects do not total up to what we can, if we choose, recommend to the City Council.
Sure.
So, all right. So we're going to start the discussion then with the ones that got the most. So as I'm looking at this, the highest scorer was Regreen Springfield Invasive Plant Program, followed by the Bike Park Study and the Thompson Triangle Fountain, and then the Marshall Roy Walking Path, and then a whole bunch of ones that are at 4, historic home renovation, the Smith Art Museum, the Forest Park Aquatic Gardens, the Elias Brookings School, and Duggan Park. So, and the rest of them, obviously, like I said, we will be discussing. So let's start off with the Springfield Invasive Plant Program. If anyone wants to make a comment as to why it was one of their choices. Ralph?
Yeah, so it was one of my choices because I think that they've been successful so far in what they've done. I think that it's a worthwhile cause to eliminate invasive species, particularly in our conservation areas and areas that people are in. And it is a relatively small dollar amount compared to the amount of money that we have. So for $40,635, I think it's a good program.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment before we move on?
I agree, and you also don't recognize how much Japanese knotweed is around until you've actually seen this program and seen the amount that's there. So I'm definitely for this program.
Very good, thank you. Gloria, you wanted to say something?
Well, it also works with some of our other projects. So it's almost like a 2-for-1 deal with the bike trail and all of that.
Yep. All right. Lily, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, basically, it's an ongoing project, and the organization has done a very good job to date, and I'd like to see it completed. So I supported that project. Okay.
All right. So unless someone else has something to add, we'll move on to the 2 projects that got 6 responses, one of which was the Springfield Bike Park Study. Anyone want to comment on that? Ralph?
Well, it sounds like this is something is in the public's eye because the way that
go ahead, Ralph.
The way that this was presented was that, there certainly are a lot of kids who are riding bikes in traffic right now, and this was presented as a possible way to mitigate that. I think that in general, it's a good idea to have a bike park where kids can get off the streets and stop riding on the streets and riding in something that's maybe a little bit more safe. And even though this is a study, and we had a lot of studies a couple of years ago, I think that this is something that does make sense to have a study on, because I think there is an impetus to build such a park, and we do need to figure out where it would be best before building it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I just had one comment. I think it's a great project. I didn't vote for it only because of feasibility studies that we had others and we've had so many, but I still think it's a really good project. That was the only reason I voted not to do it.
Yeah. Well, you didn't vote not to. You only brought in, it wasn't one among your top 8, Juanita. You didn't vote against.
No, it wasn't on my top 8, only because of that. Yeah, right. It wasn't one of my top 8 for that one reason, but I still think it's it's worthy.
Okay, good. Anyone else want to make a comment? So,
Bob, I would just say that it's something that a lot of the people in the community have been asking for. And I think it's time we took those concerns seriously.
okay. Willie, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to say something?
No, I'm good with it.
Okay.
I'm good here.
The other project that had 6 responses was Thompson Triangle Fountain. Any comments, thoughts? Ralph?
Yeah, I did not vote for this, but it was only because it was my 9th on my priority list. I think this is a good project. It's a relatively small amount of money. I think that the Thompson Triangle is an important feature in the Mcknight neighborhood, and restoring this fountain is a positive thing for that community.
Yeah, okay. It was not among my top 8, but it would probably be number 9. So it's something I think is a good project. My feeling though is when we go to allocate what pot we're taking it from, this is not, in my mind, historic preservation, because the fountain only dates from the mid-1980s. It probably qualifies under recreation because it is the main focal point of a public park. But I think it's a good project. Anyone else?
And the one reason I voted for it is it's a well-used park. There's always people in that park walking, sitting, and it's high visibility. And for us, it's a sign in that park would be visible, and it's not that much money. And anyway, that's why I support it.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree. It's a high visibility project and a well-used park. And just because we also founded the Atwater fountain as well, and I think it's a good product of fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Lamar. So number 5, receiving 5 responses, was the Marshall Roy walking path. Anyone want to comment on that? Ralph?
Yeah, I think this was a reasonable request. It was not the full amount. It was $100,000. I think that we had enough feedback from the community that people do like to have sort of a predictable flat path to walk on. So from that perspective, I felt like this fit in.
Anyone else? David? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, Bob, I will say that this was my number 9. I would gladly support this if one of my top priority projects does not make the cut. I have no issues with this project at all.
Great, yeah. I liked it. It was one of mine, and it was because it is adding a new amenity, a walking path. And when I looked at the spray pad versus the walking path, because they're both taking place in the same park, these could have been part of an application that simply exceeded our budget, but it's been divided into 2 phases. My feeling was, gee, would I rather have something that's used 3 months out of the year versus something that could be used for 7 or 8 months, depending on what snow cover is like, and can be used by something above the children level. So I thought it was a good project. Anyone else want to make comments?
Yeah.
One other thing. I'm sorry, go ahead, Juanita.
It's okay. Actually, they're both great. I love both of them. It was very difficult. I know the splash pool is very expensive, and I thought that more people would benefit by the walking path, but I would love to see both of them actually. But the walking path I just chose because I thought more people would use it, and if not, it would be over $350,000 for the 2 of them. So anyway, that's why I went with the walking path.
Thank you. And what, Ralph, you were going to say something?
I was also going to say, I also felt, and this was just a feeling, but I felt as though this was, of the two projects, that this was the one that was a little bit more community driven, I guess. And I felt as though repairing of a spray pool is something that maybe the Parks Department, is something that they should be accounting for. This seemed like it was a new thing that maybe the residents of the neighborhood kind of came up with versus a top-down project.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Anyone else? So we'll move on to those projects that received 4 responses, starting at the top with Duggan Park. Someone want to speak on, who had no, Duggan Park as their choice, speak on it? Oh, and let me say this first, just as a background. I did speak to Stuart at the coalition, and he said we really only have 2 choices. We either allocate whatever we want to allocate this year. We cannot say, oh, we'll give you $250,000 for the next 4 years. The current committee cannot commit future committees to that. So it's either allocate up to $1 million or agree that we will bond and pay for the bonding costs. And Pat Sullivan called me today to say that the chief financial officer, TJ Plant, and the city solicitor, Eddie Pakula, will indeed be talking and getting us information so we have, in a sense, an option of, well, if we were to bond for $1 million over 10 years, what's the annual payment we've committed to? Because we can commit to bonding. Or if we decide we want a 20-year payment plan, what's that look like in terms of what we have to pay every year? So by the time we meet in July, I would hope that we would have those options if we decide we want to go, if we want to support this project and we want to support it with a bond.
Bob,
Well,
how does that work? So I understand the concept that we can't necessarily vote for future years, but isn't the bond the same thing as that? Like
so, I am not an expert at this, Ralph, other than to say Stuart at the coalition says, yes, CPA can be used for bonding. So the one thing that we can, in a sense, commit future CPAs to is the yearly bond payment.
Okay, we could, in theory, though, commit to a 4-year bond, couldn't we? In theory?
I assume if there are such things as 4-year bonds, I guess we could, in theory, commit to that. Okay. And I can certainly, I intend to, this call came just today from Stuart, and the call from Pat Sullivan came just today, where he also said that the federal government has received their request for money, which has been recommended by the State Department of Recreation. And so things are looking good, but it's not yet a commitment. But so both of those calls came today, and I will be following up with either Eddie Pakula or TJ Plant to say, we really want to see the various options, because what Stuart also said is clear, is we get to decide on the options. We get to say, we're willing to have a 10-year bond that's going to cost approximately this much, because you can't quite predict until the bond goes out and gets sold. We can say, no, we want a 20-year bond because we want smaller payments every year over 20 years. So we get to decide if whatever we want to recommend, if it's a bond support. And we can certainly ask if is it possible to do a 4-year bond, but it may be that no one does 4-year bonds. But I'll ask the question.
No, I was just saying, because if you think about it, they're asking for $1 million. So if you exclude interest, which we can't do ultimately, but a 4-year bond is $250,000 per year. 10-year bond is $100,000 per year. But there's of course interest, which makes it, probably a more substantial amount that gets awarded.
Yes, correct. There's interest, and what Stuart pointed out is that there is also a there is, let's call it an administrative charge, because you have to work with specific lawyers who craft this kind of bond issues, and you have to work with companies that get a commission for selling the bond. So there is an upfront cost. And Stuart said the coalition has a program, a half-hour program to train CPAs about what they need to do, CPCs about what they need to do if they decide to go the bond route. And he said he would be happy to schedule a Zoom meeting to give us that half-hour presentation at some time. But I guess back to the issue of those people who put Duncan Park on their list. Someone want to make a comment?
So to me, Duncan Park was my number one pick, just because of the magnitude of the project, the NFL commitment, and just the scope of what's happening throughout the entire area. So I think it's a great project. It's on a main drag. So the reward for us is huge with this project.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment? No.
Well, I guess, you know, I didn't put it on my list, and it was somewhat lower overall, just because of the fact that it was such a large dollar amount, you know, at $1 million, and I felt like that was a pretty substantial commitment. I mean, I know it was $250 per year, but it sort of does hamstring the future.
Yeah. The thing that I was concerned with is when we met with them, I think it was Gloria, but I could be wrong, who said it would be helpful to get an idea of what the various recreational components would cost, as opposed to the budget that they presented, which was by construction category. And we did not get that in the update. And I don't know, Gloria, am I correct? Did you ask for that, or was it Juanita? Someone asked for it, I thought.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I would like just to, I don't want to cut Ralph off if you have more. Okay. This wasn't one of mine, and it was a difficult decision because I know they could use a park there. It's just a lot of money over several years, and the park department asks for a lot of money every year, and they have been given a lot of money every year. And like you said, it would have been nice to have more of a breakdown, so that we could have potentially said, we'll pay you this amount of, we'll, you know, give you this amount of money to do a basketball court or something, you know, but this all or nothing is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I still would like to see a breakdown, because if we agree that we want to bond for $1 million, I still want us to feel that we've bonded for the recreational components, not for the concession stands, not for the bleachers, that we sort of feel that we've been part of it, but we're part of it for those things that we think are more active recreational uses.
Absolutely.
So I guess with this, as long as the committee's comfortable with this, I'm going to re-suggest that the park department, before our next meeting, get us a breakdown of the recreational, you know, components. What's the basketball court? What's the track? What's the community garden? Whatever there is recreational oriented versus the other stuff.
I know during the initial presentation, the basketball court amount was a little inflated, and they're going to come back to us with another amount for the basketball court as well, too.
Okay.
Bob, this is Karen. Could I interrupt for 1 second? Since you're requesting additional information from the park, could we ask Suzanne to make sure she gets that word for word in the minutes so we can forward that to the park department?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, you know, once again, just to summarize, we're going to be asking them for a cost breakdown by the recreational components of this park. And Lamar said he wants a clarification regarding the cost of the basketball court. All right. So unless someone else has anything else on Duggan Park, we're going to move down to another 4, which was the Elias Brookings Apartments. Someone want to make a comment? I guess I would make the comment that for me, it's a twofer. This is both community housing and it is historic preservation. So it is a significant project. And they had asked for more than what we normally give in a year. So I'm not sure how we handle that other than to tell them to come back for a second application next year. Either that or we decide that we're suspending our rules and giving them, when we actually take the vote, we can give them more money than we say we normally will give.
Bob?
Yep.
I thought didn't we get something from them saying that the state has come up with some money for them? It sounded like it was a big chunk of money. I don't quite remember. Do you, Karen?
Give me a second, I'll look that up.
Yeah, it was. I took it to mean that there was more firm financing, that it wasn't necessarily decreasing their ask from us.
Oh, okay.
But we can certainly get a clarification of whether this recent state allocation has lessened their need for CPA money. But yeah,
they seemed in the letter, it seemed like they were very excited about this. I thought it was money. I can't remember now, but.
I got the impression that they were just telling us that they've assembled more money they firmed up their money from their other sources. And I didn't see this at all as a request to lower the amount that they're asking for from us.
Yeah,
okay.
That was my take on it as well. But we can clarify that. Okay. And once again, we don't have to worry about the issue of money today. We're discussing how we like projects or whatever. We do have to worry about the issue of money when we start voting.
Would you like me to read?
Hello.
Would you like me to read the email to you?
Hi. I just want to also state that when I read the material that we received from Brookings Project, I thought actually that they were withdrawing their request for assistance. I liked the project, but I actually thought that they were withdrawing their request for assistance. That's why I didn't actually select them. That's one of my 8. So I got confused by that, the memo that came out.
Okay.
Karen, do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do. Okay, it reads, he wanted to also, and this is from Peter Serafino. He also wanted to pass along the great news that Mass Department of Housing and Community Development has informed Home City Development that the Brookings project will be funded in 2020. We are awaiting formal announcement by Governor Baker. With a CPC award, we will have funds secured to begin renovation work in late 2020.
See, I was under the impression that, like Willie, that they didn't need our money. Of course, that, you know.
Well, we will get that clarified. I do not believe that is the case. Okay. I think he simply informed us that there was another for sure funding in place, and that we would then, you know, be one of the crucial links to come in last. Okay.
So I have some commentary on this one. So this is another one similar to the Indian Motorcycle Project, where it's a large budget project. They have a budget of $19,476,000 and change. And what I'm sort of struggling with is how required, you know, they're asking for $500,000 from us, essentially. How these are the kind of projects that get done in Springfield quite often. It seems as though, are we replacing somebody else's funding, or is this something that just wouldn't have been done if we don't give them $500,000? Like, I'm struggling with how do we sort of gauge the impact of $500,000 to them? Like, what are we getting for that? Because they're not, I feel as though they could do the project without the $500,000.
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that question, Ralph. I mean, that would have been a question to ask them when we sat with them. You know, I guess.
Well, I think we did ask them that, and they kind of just said, well, we need all the money we can get.
Right. I mean, it is 19.5 is what they need, and yeah.
But I guess, you know, so when we did this with the Indian Motorcycle Building, we asked them for, you know, the permanent deed restriction on, I can't remember how many units it was. I think it was 2 units maybe?
Ultimately 3.
Oh, it was 3, yeah. And we also asked for the exterior preservation restriction. You know, what are we going to ask for in this case? Are we going to ask for 6 or 9 or, you know, I mean.
Well, I don't think we need to figure that out right at this meeting. We will have to figure it out. You know, with Indian Motorcycle, we asked for 3 and we were giving them $175,000. So we were sort of giving them, let's say, $60,000 a unit for the restriction, the affordability restriction. So if we were to use that figure into $250,000, we would be asking for 4 units. But that's something that we get to decide if we decide to fund it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that these are the things that we need to sort of think about. Like, what do we get for the money we wouldn't have gotten otherwise? You know, it sounds like they're still going to probably have the very low income and the low income, so the 40% and 60% in there. So it's not as though we're saying, well, listen, we'll fund 4 units and those can go up to 100, because they're going to probably come back and say, we can't do that because all of our other funding doesn't allow us to do that.
Correct.
Peter just sent an email just now. He must be watching. So this is what he writes. The state funds identified in the application were pending at the time of the CPA application. The state funds are now confirmed.
Okay, yeah. And certainly to ask you, Ralph, I would be a proponent that if we were to fund this project, besides some percentage being locked in at affordable, our affordability is perpetuity, where the other funders tend to be around 50 years. But I would also be looking for either an exterior preservation restriction, or that they petition become a single building local historic district, so that this building, once it's wonderfully restored as they're proposing, will be protected in the years to come. So, all right, anyone else have any other comments, thoughts as we move on? All right, so the other one that received 4 responses was the Forest Park Aquatic Garden gazebo. Anyone?
Well, having worked in the park all those years, I know that gazebo, the one that was there before it came down, is very well used. There's always somebody there. And I know Echo's used it as an educational piece. And also, on any given day, on a Saturday or a Sunday of the week, there's a line of brides waiting to have their wedding pictures taken there. So, I mean, it's a very used place. And what is it for $100,000? And again, it's like the fountain. It's highly visible. Our plaque and fund, people would know that this is where CPA money goes.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment?
Yeah, Bob, I'll just say that I too, this was not on my top 8 list, but I would support this once we start to filter things through.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, David. Anyone else want to add anything? All right. So moving on down, the other 4 was the George Walter Vincent Smith Art Museum exterior preservation. Yeah, Ralph?
Yeah, so I guess I just want to say I think this is a pretty solid bread and butter preservation project. The museum is one of the gems in the city. It's one of the original, it's the first museum that was built, and I think that it's a positive step for them to restore the windows, including, you know, fixing the ones that have been restored inappropriately in the past. It's not a flashy project, it's just a very solid project.
Yeah.
It's also one of,
Oh, go on, Juanita.
no, it's also, in reading the history here, it's also one of the oldest museums in the country.
Well, yeah. And the other thing I would say is, you know, our condition is if you get our money and you're a historic resource, we want to make sure that your exterior is preserved. And so just like with the Springfield Science Museum, we will be asking them to remove the exemption which they have from the Quadrangle Mattoon Street Historic District. So we will get additional protection to the properties. All right. And unless anyone has something else to add, we're going down to Historic Home Renovation Program, which got 4 votes.
I have one question on this one. I think it's a great project. But the last time, when we first heard the presentation, you were sitting with a lawyer and he said he was going to look into whether this, whether the city could do that because they were giving money to individuals.
Yes, and he has not gotten back to me, but what I gave to him subsequent to that was a little printout from the coalition website that lists, you know, they have that wonderful thing where they show, you can go and look up what every CPA community is spending its money on. And the city of Cambridge, for many, many years, because they were a very early adopter of CPA, gives money to its historic commission, and they in turn give out money, in their case, to income eligible owner occupants to fix the outside of historic buildings. So there are, at least from my standpoint, there are already CPA communities that have been doing this. So I'm hoping the city solicitor will sort of look to them and agree, but we don't know. David, oh no, it's Ralph, sorry.
Yeah. So this was one of my top priorities, but one thing that I would like to discuss further, at least with the city, is I like the idea better of this being somewhat of a matching program, at the very least for those who exceed the income eligibility restrictions. I mean, I know that income eligibility is for housing, but you know, as a homeowner in a historic district, I wouldn't want to just, I don't feel it's right for somebody like me to just kind of get free money to things. I think that if we had a 60% match, that could bring more investment into the city, and it wouldn't seem like it's just a free money program. It would be more of a matching fund to recognize that there are basic costs that come with a historic home that are above what normal maintenance costs would be. So it would be almost as though this program would be helping people out because they're in a historic district, but it wouldn't be paying for their overall maintenance in general.
Ralph, it's Dave. I would absolutely agree with that. And more importantly, if we approve this for Mcknight, does this not in fact set a precedent for all of the other historical communities within the city?
Oh, I guess I would agree, Dave. This is, in a sense, at least in my mind, if we were to recommend funding and city council goes along with it, this would be the test program to see how it works, and it would ultimately perhaps be extended to all of the local historic districts in the city.
But Bob, would that would eat up a significant chunk of our budget, would it not?
Well, I mean, there's nothing that says that we then have to eat up a whole bunch of our budget. We could, let's just pretend that over time this expands to all of the local historic districts. We could still say, we're giving you $300,000 this year. Yes, your program's going to have to be more competitive, or it's first come, first serve, and when you run out of money, you run out of money. But it's still better, in my opinion, than nothing, because we have not had assistance to historic district homeowners in the city for, you know, a program significant program for probably 20 years. So
And-
to me, it's better than nothing.
Right. And I would actually agree with that. My only concern about this is, instead of our own body, we are giving the responsibility of allocating dollars to somebody else outside of our own group.
Yeah, but that's no different than what we did with the first-time homebuyer program. We gave the Office of Housing money, and they're the ones that are responsible for vetting to make sure the homeowners are income eligible and that they're buying the house in Springfield, et cetera, et cetera. So,
and if we've got a responsible group of individuals doing that, I just, as we allocate these dollars, it moves down a layer, a layer, a layer. So a much needed program, and certainly supportive of that. That is my concern.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I'm not sure how we deal with some of the concerns like what Ralph raised. I mean, the program is being proposed by the Office of Planning and Economic Development, and I think they have a limited capacity to spend on this spend staff time on this program. So the more restrictions that we say, the more problematic it should be. And I don't know whether it makes any sense that perhaps, Ralph, we deputize you as a committee of one, or whether it's you and David in a committee of two, to have the conversation with them about, well, what happens if we put income restrictions on, and if you're under the CPA limit, it's, you don't have to do a match, but if you're over the CPA limit, you do. For us to talk about that in a vacuum without hearing their response as to what that does for them, staff-wise, is problematic.
They do in the proposal. It says, if it is found that interest within the Mcknight Local Historic District is not as anticipated, the staff would like to be able to open up the monies to other historic districts. So they actually said that in their narrative.
Yeah, if there is an interest. So
if there isn't an interest.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there will, just my opinion, there will be no shortage of interest in that district.
Yeah.
Maybe, but so the one thing that I've always been a proponent of a program like this since I visited the city of Victoria in British Columbia, and they have a very similar program where they match, I believe, 40% of owners' expenses, and it can include painting, it can include porch repairs, that kind of thing. And I think they have something like 1,700 props in their district, and I believe their budget is somewhere around maybe $1 million a year or something like that. So I think the 200,000 may go a little further than we might think, especially if there's matching money.
But Ralph, this is for owner-occupied properties, correct?
Correct.
So is it possible that somebody who comes in, purchases a property in Mcknight at a severe discount, says, yes, I plan on living in it, thank you for the funds, and now I turn around and sell it?
Yeah, those are, I think, details that we would need to work out with the Office of Planning. Some kind of a clawback, maybe.
Right. So I love the program, fully support it, but I just don't want it to be abused. That's my only concern.
And the other thing too is we have heard from members of the public who have been sort of clamoring for a program like this. So maybe, David, that does go to your point that there will be a significant demand.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm still wondering how do we move forward with, not that we have to do it tonight, but it certainly makes no sense that at whatever point we take a vote that puts on restrictions that we have not yet discussed with the potential grantee. So when I would raise the issue of perhaps, Ralph and maybe David find a time to go down, or Zoom or whatever, with the folks who are proposing this from Planning and Economic Development so you understand their constraints and they understand where you're coming from. Because I agree, I would be far more interested in having a program that has people, if they have the income, to put up some of their own money. But whether the planning department has the staff capability of then monitoring that is the other issue.
I'd be willing to talk to them, and certainly, too, if he's willing.
Okay.
As would I.
Okay.
All right. So, David,
So
I'll get in touch with you
yeah,
and we'll
so-
try to set something up with planning, I guess.
Yeah.
Virtually.
I think you should tell them that, they scored reasonably well in the first round, but we still have some issues on the actual implementation and how much ability to tweak is there on this. Okay, thank you. So moving on down, then we're now in the two projects had 3 responses. One is Kilroy House exterior restoration. So that was David and Juanita, I think, and me. So, David, do you have anything to say, or Juanita?
Well, again, it's part of that historic area. It is a historic house.
Mm-hmm.
It is for a project. It's for the roof. I think it is a solid project. I know they want to do more, but at least the roof is getting it started.
Yes, and I don't know if you saw the letter that came in from the museums, which basically said after meeting with us and when we raised whether what they were proposing to do in their phase 2 regarding their stucco repair, they spoke to their architect who looked into it and decided that what they were proposing would not have met the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Oh.
Therefore, they're changing what they would be asking for in phase 2, and they're no longer proposing some stucco repair in phase 1, but are looking for, besides the roof work, some money that would do the study by their architect so that they know exactly what is the what is the actual composition of the stucco, so that when they do phase 2 and they're making the specs, they're doing the correct thing. So, all right, anyone else?
Yeah, Bob, I would just say that I supported this because we've supported them in the past, and it seems like a reasonable request.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot of money, and I think they're good partners. So not a whole lot of thought other than I think it's a great project, and not a lot of cost at our expense.
Okay, good. So moving on, Long Pond feasibility study. That was Lamar and Gloria and Terry.
Bob?
Yep.
I like the idea of the feasibility study because there are a lot of lakes up there.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a lot of water activity for people up in the Indian Orchard area. There's the 5 Mile Pond in Pine Point, but it's not easily accessible if you don't have a car. So I thought the idea of being able to look at all of the ponds, not just one, but look at all of them and determine which have capabilities to provide some swimming access, boating, whatever, is a good thing for the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I was concerned. The original one was for $100,000 for the feasibility study, and then along the way, the park department said they could do the feasibility study for all of them for the same amount of money. I don't know. That sounded. I was a little confused by that.
Well,
First,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
First, the Long Pond was going to be $100,000, but then they said, oh, they could do all of the lakes for $100,000. That didn't sound right to me.
Yeah. Well, what the application was is it carried $50,000 for the study and $50,000 for tree removal and dredging, and so the study component of it was only $50,000. So I suppose we could ask from the park department a clarification, and so Suzanne, take this down. clarification is the initial study was for 50,000, and can that 50,000 study the water-based recreation for all of those parks in Indian Orchard?
Bob,
But-
when
And also, go ahead, Gloria.
when they presented it, my question was, is the feasibility study just for Long Pond? What about the other ponds in Indian Orchard? I don't know all of the names of them, but I know that there is Loon Pond that at one point they wanted to make as a swimming access. So that's when they went back and decided to make the feasibility study to include all of the ponds. And that's what Laura's letter stated when she sent in her letter.
Yeah, but
from the Parks Department.
But refresh my memory, maybe Karen, you can be looking for that letter while we're discussing it. Did the cost of the study then go from 50,000 to 100, or did she simply clarify that the study for 50,000 would look at all of the ponds in Indian Orchard rather than just Long Pond?
That would be from Laura Walsh, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, to me, what's confusing is, so now we have a study that for 100,000, you do a feasibility study and cut down trees, which doesn't make sense because you do a feasibility study to find out what you should do. And already they know they're going to be cutting down trees. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then to say, oh, well, the same amount of money, we can do all the ponds. But there's no budget for that. It's just really like an amount of money. And that's why I wasn't comfortable with that, even though I would like to see those ponds used.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, well, for $100,000, we can do a feasibility study and cutting down trees, but I don't understand why be cutting down trees when you don't even know what the feasibility study's outcome is. And then to say, with that same 100,000, we'll do all the ponds. And that's not a budget. Does that make sense?
Well, it certainly makes sense that if you're doing a study, you're not doing any physical work now. So that's why I was under the impression that the study part of the budget was only 50,000, and that was the figure we're talking about. Well, let's see if Karen can find the letter, because Laura may have answered our question as to whether it is for all the ponds and whether the figure for the study is holding at 50,000, or whether to do all the ponds is now taking up all of the 100,000. If her letter doesn't say that, then that will be something that we will ask for a clarification before we meet again.
Well, I have here right in front of me the thing from the park department, and it was a breakdown of each one.
Okay.
Project scope?
Yeah.
Yes, the scope.
It's a two-page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if whoever has it, Juanita, can you read on Long Pond what they're talking about then?
It is the recommendation of the Department of Parks, Buildings and Recreation Management that CPA funding be used to initiate phase 1, a feasibility study of all water bodies in Indian Orchard to determine their value for water-based recreation. Then it just goes on to explain, but the locations would include city-owned Long Pond, Demick Pond, Mona Lake, Chickpea River waterfront, and Loon Pond. So this is the first step. The department is confident that phase 1 can be accomplished with $50,000.
Okay.
So that, oh no, but they're asking for 50,000.
Yeah. So they're asked. Initially the application was for
Was for
100.
100.
Half of that 100 was for trees and dredging, which is no longer taking place. So now they're asking for 50,000, and it will be for a study of all of
All of them.
and plus the Chicopee Riverfront. Okay. So at least that clarifies it. We don't have to ask them unless someone's got a further question. We don't have to ask them for a clarification. Yeah.
This just brings up, I think that when we do our next round, that we look at spending a little bit more time perhaps on how to write the proposal so that the proposal isn't ambiguous. And these are the things that, you know, when we get a proposal, we look at it and we have questions because we're not quite sure what they mean.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Gloria, if I may ask a question, are you suggesting that we present that information in some form on the website or during an outreach program? Like, what exactly specifically are you suggesting?
Well, probably it could be both. You know, have it on the website and provide it in a presentation that we do, because there were several applications that they needed work to be viable. And so
I agree with you 100%, but who will write that information? Like that would need to be.
I have no problem sitting, not that we have to decide today, but I would have no problem sitting down with someone and working something out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's make a note that as we're getting ready to plan for next year, we will have this discussion. We don't have to have it tonight.
Great.
Okay. So now we're down to the projects that got 2 responses. Building beauty for the community. That was Juanita and Ralph.
So I can comment on that one. Obviously, I'm not commenting on their program because I think that that's irrelevant to the discussion, but their property is the old School Street Schoolhouse, and it is an early schoolhouse in the city, and it has not, to my knowledge, been had an awful lot of money put into it for preservation. I feel as though this structure is probably getting close to the threatened stage at some point, because it does have sort of a let's call it like a lower cost nonprofit in there who is not lavishly spending money on the project. My only concern with this project, though, is they're talking about refurbishing the windows and repointing the brick or masonry work, but I don't know what the status is of the windows. So if they're actually talking about replacing the windows, I think. It was very unclear to me. I know that Pam Holland mentioned that she felt as though the windows were not original to the building, but I didn't really see any documentation on that. So I would like to, and I would certainly volunteer to go down there and meet with them and find out the condition of the windows and whether they are truly either, you know, something that was done in the 70s or 80s, or if they were something that's original to the building. But as far as that dollar amount goes to fix up the windows on that property, I think it's a reasonable amount.
What they were talking, I have the proposal here, and they were talking about replace or refurbish 17 windows. So they're talking about some of them won't even be replaced.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify it. And Ralph, I would be happy to appoint you as a committee of 1 to go and tour it, because clearly, you know, with your historic experience, you are the window expert on the CPC as well. So I would look forward to that. What I remember them saying is that the windows, Pam Holland said these windows were all changed probably in the 1970s. I think it probably happened when the city sold the building. They sold it to, I think it was Junior Achievement in the 1980s, and then Junior Achievement sold it to some social service agency that was there for maybe another 15 years. So I think somewhere in that window is when the windows got changed, but it would be helpful. The other thing I want to add is I did have the discussion with Stuart regarding, we certainly know that when CPA money goes to help something, whatever it's helping with, let's say it's windows, it needs to comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards. I said, so what happens when CPA money is helping with item number 1 and other money is helping with item number 2? Does item number 2 have to comply? And he said, well, the state law does not speak to that. So he says it's up to each CPC to decide whether they want, because there's some money involved, they want to require the Secretary of Standards for everything that's taking place at that time as part of that project. So
for the record, could you just repeat which project you're referring to here?
I'm referring, well, I'm speaking in general to any property that is a historic resource being assisted with CPA money. I bring it up because the issue of the windows is being raised here. So, for example, let's just pretend
For which project, though, the windows?
Well, we're building beauty for the community,
okay,
which is the School Street School at 57 School Street. So, theoretically, if they were asking us to help with 17 windows, but they really were fixing 30 windows, the question is whether we would weigh in on making sure that the windows that weren't being paid for by us also met the secretary standards.
So I'd like to weigh in on that point. This is very similar to when tax credit money is done, is used on a project. And what the Mass Historical Commission does is they will look at the entire project. They will not say, oh, we're going to treat the tax credit money for the part and you can butcher the rest of the building. They treat it as a holistic project. And I'm not saying that this organization is butchering the building at all, but I'm just saying that I think that it would make sense when we do look at a project that somebody's asking for money for, that we should evaluate everything that's being done and take that into consideration when, so if they came back and said, well, we want to replace 20 of them and we're going to refurbish 15 of them, we might want to say, well, we're not really comfortable with that because our money is in some way facilitating the destruction of historic resources, even though, because it's allowing your project to go forward.
Yeah, no, I guess I agree with you, Ralph. I especially agree if we're talking about exterior issues, because that's primarily where the public benefit's coming from for the public sees the building. In some cases, people even have buildings that have important interiors, so we might extend that to those as on a case-by-case basis. So, Ralph, the bottom line is you will be going and paying a visit there in a couple weeks, and then when we meet, you can give us your thoughts on what kind of windows are there and what needs to be done.
Yeah, I'll do an inventory of what they have and explain what each one of them is.
Okay, thank you. The other project that got 2 responses was the Spanish-American War Monument, which was me and Willie. Willie, do you want to say anything on it?
Yes, as I stated earlier when we received the presentation, I've always I've driven in that area, and I've always admired that statue down there, and I've seen the wear and tear throughout the years on the statue, and I thought it was a good idea to restore it, so I supported it, and that's why I supported it.
Okay, thank you. It was one of mine. However, I only want to pay this year for the study. There was a very high contingency cost with this project. And when I asked Laura Walsh as to why it was so high, because usually contingencies are like 10 or 15% of total project costs, this was much higher. She said she would check. And then when the park department sent us that document that Juanita read from, giving us more information on the projects, they didn't address the issue. They simply said $20,000 to study how to best preserve the statue, and the rest of the money is for the space. And I frankly, and we can discuss this at further down the line, I think the statue is the historic resource, and the monument, the pedestal on which the statue sits. I don't think the green space is the historic. And if it is historic, it needs to be brought back to what it looked like in some historic period, not simply gussied up to 21st century standards. But anyway, so my feeling was I want to help with it. I think we need to do the study to find out how much it's going to cost to do the monument, and then debate whether we want to be at all part of fixing up the green space around the monument, because it's really not terribly recreational oriented either. Ralph?
No, they were
Yeah,
talking, oh, go ahead, Ralph, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I concur with you, Bob. I felt as though the project budget was fairly heavily padded, and that the beautification is not really a CPA function. I agree with fixing the historic resource, but I cannot accept the idea that is parkland, for example. It is in an incredibly high traffic area. If you ever told me that I was going to go stand there with my kids, I would say, no way. It's like a hazard almost. The cars go by there so fast, and there's no crosswalk to even get to that area. So I think that the statue does need to be preserved, but I don't see any value in the beautification.
Yeah. Juanita, you were going to say something?
No, basically, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I mean, because they talked about putting benches there, and you can't, that's.
Okay. All right. So now we're down to the projects that received one response. The Classical High Restoration, Lamar. Do we still have Lamar?
Wait a minute, there's the splash pool also received 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So the Marshall Roy spray pool. Yes, 2. Sorry, my math was wrong. And that was David and Willie, I think.
Yes, Marshall Roy Park is heavily used. I've driven by that park also throughout the years, and I've seen families out there, and I've seen sports team utilizing the park facilities, and what they're asking us to is restore something that had existed there for years and has been well used by my own observation, and I just felt it would be good to restore it if money was there to do so. So that's why I supported it.
Okay.
Yeah, and Bob, I would echo Willie's comment on that. I am also supportive of the walking path. So, if push comes to shove and we've got to sort of, make a compromise on this, I'm fine, but I think something to support the Marshall Roy Field would be, I'd be.
Okay, very good. So, unless I've done wrong addition, we're now down to the projects that got one response. So Classical High Restoration.
Oh, no, we missed the zoo.
Oh, Lord, yeah, I'm terrible. And I added that up correctly. So the zoo, which was David and Terry Mitchell.
Yeah, Bob, I think it's an underutilized resource.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the commentary that they submitted with their application, there's a really positive trend, not only in terms of what they've done, but in terms of the amount of visitors they have. It's part of Forest Park. It's something I think we need to preserve. And, I tried to balance my recommendations out across all 4 categories, trying to stay within budget. So again, I'm open to discussion, but this is something I felt pretty strongly.
Okay.
My only problem with it, although, but by the way, the zoo is not part of the park. It's a private.
It is. You're right.
It is, but it costs money to get in there. And I feel like if we're putting something out for the citizens of Springfield, if you have to pay to get in, I'm not comfortable with that.
I guess
and I don't know how that works with Stewart. I mean, can CPA do that?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think, as far as I know, the law does not speak to that. So my guess is, and I can call Stewart or email him, my guess is, since the law doesn't speak to it at all, he would probably say that's a local decision.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned with, I think that there are components with this application that are not CPA eligible. Building a medical or improving a medical facility, I don't think is CPA eligible. Building, helping with a classroom facility, that's not, that to me is not recreation, that's education. So I think that there may be some components of this that we might want to help, but I think we really have to parse everything that they've asked for using those definitions that are in the DOR allowable use chart, which they've lifted directly from the state law. Okay.
Yeah, I want to just say, I agree with you, Bob. I think that there are some components to the zoo that are important. I think that they are an important feature in the city, even though it does cost a modest amount of money to get in there. But yeah, I think that there may be some room there for help, but certainly not for everything.
Okay. So I guess now, unless I've overlooked thing, we're down to the projects that got one response. So Classical High Restoration, and I don't see Lamar, who had it on his list, here any longer. So moving on down, emergency rental assistance. Gloria, it was on your list.
Shouldn't we at least? Oh.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, we can, Ralph. So you want to say something?
Well, did I just hear Lamar speak up, or is he not here?
No, I don't think, I'm not seeing Lamar showing up on the participants.
Okay. All right. So if you want to talk about classical, certainly I think at the very least, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for CPA money to fund 100% of their window restoration, since they're not really a nonprofit. And I'm okay in general with CPA funding private property, but I think that there needs to be a pretty substantial contribution from the property owner as well, in sort of a matching fund. And in this case, they're just saying, I want $120,000. And we did receive several letters of support. We also received at least one letter that said, it raised some questions as to whether or not this would happen anyway. So I would be willing to, in general, to talk with them for a lower amount of money. But I think, actually, now that I think about it, I believe that it was mentioned in that letter that the windows are not even original they're not historic. Is that correct?
I believe the windows may have been changed when the building was renovated in the late 1980s.
And so are we talking about refurbishing windows, or were they talking about painting sills?
I think they were talking about painting windows. It was a painting thing, I think, not a refurbishment thing.
Yeah, Ralph, it's Dave. I used to live at Classical. And I will tell you that the windows, yes, they are aluminum framed replacement windows that need some repair. There are also wooden sills that require painting. I will say this, that the property manager who applied for the CPA funds is in essence being reimbursed for that by funds coming through an assessment for those who live at Classical. So it's almost like double dipping, which I think there was one letter that clearly alluded to that, and that is in fact the case.
Okay.
There is a fund that exists for all of that type of restoration, and it's significant. So I think that is what that's what drove that individual to write that letter, and I would say that is accurate.
Okay. All right. So moving on down, the emergency rental assistance for COVID. Gloria, you want to say anything?
I just felt for those people who are having difficulty paying their rent because of not being able to work, it was a good idea. I don't know how it would work out, but that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone have a comment?
Bob,
I wasn't really all that impressed with this, because I think that I don't feel like this is merely much of a local, I mean, I understand it's certainly a local issue, but I feel like this is something that a state or a federal program should be funding.
Okay. David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm certainly sympathetic to the request. My only concern is it something that our funds are actually approved to be used for? And I did not know that, and I was also not. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of detail behind the plan on how those funds would be utilized.
I'm pretty sure that if you look at the Department of Revenue's allowable use chart and you look under support for housing, I think rental assistance is listed there. So it's no question in my mind that I think it's an eligible CPA event, activity. I'm not sure whether we should be funding it. But
right. Okay.
You know.
I thought Stuart said that you couldn't. Oh no, that was the shelter. Sorry, wrong one.
Yeah, temporary housing, he said, was not CPA eligible.
Okay,
Just
right.
for informational purposes, I saw on the news that another community did vote to fund almost an identical program. I think it might have been Newton with CPA funding. That's just for informational purposes.
Okay. All right. So the Highland Heritage Rail Trail. And this was something that was on Lamar's list, and we don't have Lamar. So if anyone else wants to comment, I guess I would say this is another one of those things that I'm not sure whether everything that was in the proposal is CPA eligible. I don't think that it's either recreational or historic to put in a trolley line, whether it's on a track or whether it's a bus that looks like a trolley. I don't think that falls under CPA eligibility at all. Whether the idea of extending the walking and biking path so it connects the two trails that are parts of the trails that are under study right now, to me is an excellent one. But I don't know how you handle it when, yeah. So Ralph?
Well, I was going to say, I think this is almost in direct contradiction with the direction that we've been going, which is to fund two parts of that rail trail that have already, you know, they're already in the process. I think that if we were to build a trolley line on another part of it, then you don't have the ability to have the rail trail connect all the way through. And I don't think that I really believe the claim that you could have both trolleys and bicycles on the same pathway. And I didn't really think the budget even made a lot of sense either.
Okay. Anyone else? So moving on, the other one, reuse wood to rebuild wealth. Willie, it was on your list.
Hi, how are you doing again?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the project that I chose to select actually qualified for funding from the Preservation Committee. In retrospect, I believe I was attracted to it initially because they had the opportunity to provide training for youth who wanted to get involved in a career in this area. So that attracted to me more than anything else. But as I review it now, I'm not sure it even qualifies for funding at this time. So I'm okay with it not being selected.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I would agree. I think this is a great idea, but I don't think it's EPA eligible. You know, a historic resource is a building, structure, artifact, vessel, and what we're talking about are building parts. I think if this were a operating program and they came to us a proposal that says we're working with a specific historic house who's either missing its front porch, but we have documentation of what it looked like, and we're going to help them rebuild it. Or if they were working with someone who's got missing or deteriorated things, and they're using the old building parts to restore it, I think that's eligible. But I think what they've talked about is is clearly, you know, not eligible.
It is a great idea, though.
Yeah, yes. And as Stuart says, not all great ideas are CPA eligible.
Yeah, right.
All right. The Rock Rimmon Boathouse.
So I'm the one who put in the vote for that. The reason that I did was I thought that it was a relatively small amount of money. I think that the Rock Rimmon Boathouse is actually a fairly unique historic structure in the city because it is the last remaining boathouse. I do understand that it doesn't look very nice right now because it has been chopped up and, well, it's mostly been added on to over the years. But I think that it would be, if we could get that boathouse to look the way that it used to and to be restored and be reused for what it was originally intended to be used, which is a boathouse, that would be a pretty big plus for the city. My only concern is that I would just hate to see the study come back to say, no, it can't be used. I don't know how large of a concern that is, but I just like the idea of somebody looking at this building and saying like, hey, and realizing like, hey, that's our last boathouse. That was an important part of the city history, and it's something that could be restored potentially.
I just want to make sure that everyone got the email from the Pioneer Valley Rowing Club saying that they were in discussion with the park department and were changing the category from being a historic resource to being a recreational resource. So, you know, they never got a determination from the historical commission as to whether it is a historic resource for the city. So, you know, I guess I'm in favor of the study. This just didn't make my top 8 because it's also looking into expanding the park. I'm not convinced myself whether what is there that's been so altered over the years really is a historic resource anymore. So, you know, it could be that the study comes back and says, no, it's coming down and we're putting up a faux Victorian. But unless the historical commission is going to find this, that it's a historic resource, you know, we're not the committee that determines what is a historic resource. It's the historical commission.
Is the issue that they weren't able to go to the historical commission? David, were you at all involved with that, or did they?
Ralph, I honestly don't recall this coming before us.
Yeah, I don't think they went before.
It is not. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. So I do not know, Ralph, whether it was a timing issue that they couldn't get to the commission, or in discussion with the park department, there was a determination that no, this was not a historic resource issue. This was a recreation issue.
Sounds like they could use a really nice plaque with some pictures showing what the place looked like, because that building isn't at all what it was. But a plaque could be something they could put up. Anyway, that's not for us to decide.
All right. So now we're down to those proposals that didn't get any responses. So the Mcknight District Common Area Restoration. Anyone want to comment on that? Ralph? Yes, Ralph?
Yes. You know, that was the proposal that was seemed like there were a lot of various things that were mentioned in it, including a traffic study and possibly building a giant archway to restrict traffic into the neighborhood. I don't think that is really a CPA eligible function. I understand the general premise, and you know, I can't disagree that traffic does ultimately in some ways damage historic resources, but I just don't feel that's a strong enough connection. You know, I think there might have been some components of that project that potentially could have been CPA eligible, and I would maybe encourage them to look hard and resubmit next year. Like I think that they did mention potentially street signs or something along those lines. But I just felt as though in general the project was very it wasn't very focused, and you know, there was a lot of I just didn't, I understand the general request, but I didn't feel as though it was very well presented, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I guess I would share that, and I would say that, you know, when we actually do the votes, that is, you know, that we specifically tell them the following components we do not believe to be CPA eligible. The following we think are, but you need to come back with a more concrete proposal next year. You know. Okay. Unless someone's got something else, down to the preservation revolving fund. You know, I guess what I'll lead off and just say, you know, this proposal was sort of in competition with the other proposal from the Office of Planning and Economic Development. I have to say, all things being equal, I am more comfortable having a municipal agency run the program than a non-governmental organization. And last year or 2 years ago, the city solicitor had really issues with a non-government organization doing it. So, you know, I'm in favor of a program, but I think it should be a city-run program. Ralph, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say I agree. I think that, you know, if the city wasn't going to be doing something, it'd be a different story, but the city is proposing to do something, and it makes more sense from an accountability perspective for the city to be controlling the fund, unless, you know, somebody comes up with something that the city can't do or has a very radically different but compelling idea. And I think this was just more of what has been proposed by the city.
Yeah. Anyone else have comments? So model mixed.
But I would agree with both you and Ralph. My only reservation, and I would certainly support the city running this as opposed to a private individual or individuals. But I would still like to keep the decision making in-house to our group. And I just have a problem allocating funds to somebody else who in turn will further allocate funds.
Okay, thank you, David. Model mixed income affordable ownership.
I thought the application wasn't even complete, number one. So there was so much of it that was missing.
Yeah, I would agree, Juanita. In fact, this is the one that isn't this the one that came in with the cover sheet being for a different project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Springfield Community Land Trust Revolving Loan Fund. So you all saw the email that Stuart said basically you can pay for a portion of administration of a CPL eligible program, but you can't pay for the administration of an entire agency. So clearly they were looking for us to underwrite an executive director for them. And we clearly, if they had a program up and running, could underwrite what's the cost of fixing 3 or 4 houses. So it's another one of the things that I think is clearly that area of the city along Mulberry Street desperately needs attention, but I think the program needs to be thought out with more depth than what we had given to us.
It is a great idea because those big houses, they're gonna decay. Nobody's gonna buy them and sink a lot of money, but they could be turned into condos, you know, but.
Yeah, I want to agree. That was my gut reaction when reading through the proposal and listening to the proposal, that such a large chunk of it was for funding the person to run the program that it didn't make CPA sense.
Okay, unless any other comments, the last one is Trinity House up at Bay Street. Ralph?
So as you clarified via email, a shelter is not a CPA eligible function. So that kind of cuts off the housing request. I think that there may be potentially, there could be some merit on the historic request, but I think that they're requesting to do things that are not within the Secretary of the Interior standards. So again, they're requesting to replace windows and doors. Now, I could see in some certain circumstances that something like that could make sense to quote unquote preserve a historic structure. And this one, you know, maybe is in that realm since it has been abandoned or at least unused for a number of years. But I feel as though they aren't really looking to historically fix the property. They're just looking to fix the property, and it happens to be in a historic district, and they're asking for CPA funding. So, you know, if they were to either clarify that they are going to do things to the Secretary of the Interior standards, meaning that they're going to refurbish their windows and their doors, that would be a different thing than what they're asking for.
Yeah, I had asked Karen to email them to say what I wanted was an inventory of how many windows still were inside the building and how many of them were wood versus vinyl, and to have a couple of photographs of the windows sent to us, and they didn't do that. So I don't know whether the committee wants Karen to reiterate that request and say that we need it within 2 weeks or whatever, so that it's here prior to our deliberations and votes. So,
I think if it had gotten more votes, that would be a possibility, but with 0 votes, I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, okay. All right. Ralph, you were going to say something?
No, I think I agree with what Gloria said.
Okay. Juanita, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah.
You want to say anything?
No, no. I mean, the project is a good idea, but it doesn't fit with what we're doing. It doesn't fit with CPA.
Okay. So that concludes our discussion of the applications. Karen, if you can at some point take this Excel spreadsheet and email it to us, and when you email it to us, figure out how you can total the amounts that everyone put in for their projects, so we have an idea.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
And one last thing, if Suzanne could also put it in the record, what specifically we're looking for from Lisa Goodman on the Trinity House.
We're not looking for anything because both Gloria and Ralph thought that since it was not well received, it would be a waste of their time to do anything.
Okay.
Not them to do anything more.
You know,
I would just say, you know, we could provide feedback to them at a later time for that if they wanted to come back in in another year and request things that are actually historic to the Secretary of the Interior standards, I would certainly at least be willing to entertain that. But yeah.
Okay, Juanita?
yeah, I know when I look at my list, those are the ones that I feel I can fully fund. But then I look at others that I want to fund part of it, so my list doesn't really reflect what I want. Do you know what I mean? I look at some of the others and I know I want to either put some money into it or I didn't vote on it. I didn't have it as my top 8 because maybe I wasn't sure where some of the money was going. So I feel like I see my 8, but there's more there that I want.
Yeah.
And I guess it'll all work out when we give out the money.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, I guess what I would say is, you know, in the first year, we actually recommended funding for 13 projects. Last year, we recommended funding for 15 projects. So clearly, the fact that you were asked to come in with your top 8 was simply so we see how things are falling out.
Yeah.
When we start voting, my guess is we will end up voting for more than 8 projects. I don't know how many more. And the other thing I would say is, yeah, we can certainly, with some of these things, decide we're giving them less money. You know, when last year we recommended $100,000 to the Science Museum where they asked for $250,000. They were still very pleased to get $100,000. You know, so some of these things that even if we want to help them a little bit, they will be happy, as opposed to, oh no, it's either all or nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, it's Dave. And
Yep.
to Juanita's point, I think that it's in, you know, and I've been on the committee here for two seasons here. It's clear to see that, you know, we have people who are wildly skilled at putting applications and presentations together, and we have people who aren't. In my heart of hearts, I would like Juanita said, to fund some things, but they just, you know, the applications are not complete. They don't have a solid plan. There's no real strategy in place. I think there's a huge opportunity, you know, to Gloria's point earlier, to educate the folks who are actually applying for CPA funds. You know, I'm not sure how to perfect that or how to improve it, but it's certainly something worth discussing, because I think a lot of people who truly need and perhaps deserve our funds are not best prepared to come before the CPA.
Okay.
Can I respond? Not respond, but also add to that. I guess another component that I see is that we do have a wide variety of people with a wide variety of experience who have put in their applications. Some are very professional, have been doing this a long time, and some are total rookies at the situation. And I think that there may be opportunities for us to, let's just call it, gamble a little bit and say we're going to take a risk with a group, even though they may not have the most professional proposal, and maybe they don't quite have the most solid plan, but we're willing to give them some amount of money and let them see what they can do with it, to give them almost like a seed so they can start to grow their experience a little bit. And maybe just something to think about as we vote in the following meeting.
Okay.
Well
That's
said.
good.
Well said.
So I guess the next thing brings us up that we need to set a date for our July meeting. As I had mentioned to folks in the email, that you know, our normal meeting is the first Tuesday, so we would have normally met on July 7th, but the comptroller's office isn't closing out the books for fiscal 20 until Thursday, July 9th. And therefore, if we want to know what every red cent came in, so we know what we really have to allocate, we should be meeting after that. So Karen sent out the doodle poll, most responded, but we need to find out what works for Focus Springfield. That's the most important. And then we'd like to hear from those people who hadn't responded to the doodle poll. So Karen, take it away. Where are we at this point?
Okay, the only one that didn't respond was David. So that's it for the committee members. Most of the people are able, everyone except for Willie can meet on July 21st, which is a Wednesday.
But let's back up. What can Steve carry? And
okay, so Steve and I had a conversation today, and he was wondering if we need to continue with this format, or can we try something else? Possibly we get our own Zoom account through the CPC, our own account that we can, you know, share out there for the public meeting. So I think those are some questions for Ed Pakula. I don't know, Steve, do you want to, do you have anything you want to add to that? I don't know if he's listening or not.
Steve is no longer on the call. He jumped off to do some other stuff.
Okay.
And Karen, I'm good on the 21st. My apologies.
No, that's okay. All right. Good. Great. So everyone can make it, and it's just a matter of finding out what we're going to do, if we'll continue with Springfield Focus, or I would like to suggest, and I know it's not an agenda item, but that we invest in our own Zoom account, which is probably like, I don't know, $120 a year, maybe.
So let me just make sure. We need to have a Zoom account that other people can watch but not necessarily participate in? or will they then simply be watching us on our Facebook account? I mean, if Focus Springfield's no longer going to be doing this, please explain to.
Okay. It would be a Zoom account that we would put out on Facebook. Yes. So that would be the public portion of it. And only invited people would participate. They could watch.
Yeah, well, I think we need to do something sooner than later. So I guess I would look forward to a motion that authorizes $200 or whatever. We've got the money in our, in our administrative costs, at least once city council approves it, to do stuff. So let's pursue that then.
Okay. If we want to allocate it, and then we'll just wait to actually make the purchase until.
Well, we'll say.
I think we should anyway, because who knows how long this COVID is going to last. And Focus Springfield has been really generous with their time, but they're not. This isn't really.
Yeah. Well, so here's the deal. I mean, I think $200 is a pittance to pay to make sure that we have Zoom for the remainder of this year, at least, let's say. I do not know budget-wise, as of June 30th, the budget for 20 is kaput. I do not know whether we can, if we wait for July 1 to order the Zoom account, whether we can do that. So I guess what I'm suggesting is we have a motion just to authorize Karen to purchase a Zoom account that will get us at least 4 or 5 months down the road, and to get it soon, because I would not want to find that on July 1, the answer from the city is, you don't have a city council approved budget, and therefore you can't buy anything until city council meets, and they ain't meeting until, let's say, July 20th. In which case we can't get the Zoom account. So let's get a motion.
Wait. Karen to pursue a Zoom account.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. Juanita, you had a question?
No, I'm saying we must have about $200 for supplies and equipment, right?
We do, but the budget ends on June 30th, so we need to spend it before the budget ends.
So let's get the Zoom right away.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah.
So
okay, good.
So there's a motion to, what was the amount, Ralph?
Let's just say $250, up to $200.
Up to $250?
Yeah, and we're going to be somewhere around there, right?
Yeah,
it won't exceed that, trust me.
Okay, so up to $250 to get a Zoom account that will get us through the end of the year. All in favor? So Gloria?
Yes.
Okay, Gloria, yep. David?
Yes.
Juanita?
Yes.
Terry Mitchell is gone. Lamar is gone. Terry Rodriguez is not here. Ralph?
Yes.
Willie?
Yes.
And Bob is yes. So that's it. So it looks like we are meeting on the 21st of July. That's the date that the most number of CPA members can make it, correct?
Correct. The only one that can't make it is Willie.
But wasn't there also one that Terry Mitchell couldn't make, but Willie could?
Terry Mitchell couldn't make any dates except the 21st.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, I will interrupt that. I may be available to meet
great.
on the 21st. So go ahead and schedule it.
All right. Wonderful. All right. So I guess I would say that at 8:45, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right. So and I'm gonna, you can, yeah. Well, just nod your head and we'll take it as that yes. Okay. And Willie, we're assuming you're nodding your head. So thank you, everyone. It was a great meeting. Thanks, Brendan. We appreciate the work that you and Steve have been doing.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Yes. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.